Please support Unfound during this holiday season at Patreon, PayPal, or YouTube. Jamie Gregory Lee was a 19-year-old from Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada. He had older brothers who were twins, and Jamie pretty much kept out of trouble. In the early morning hours of September 4th, 2011, Jamie was camping with friends in Smoky Flats when an argument resulted in Jamie hitting his head, then storming off in anger. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. Over 7 years and 300 disappearances into Unfound's existence, we all, myself included, continue to struggle with the reason that searches fail. Jason Landry, Mara Murray, David Schrader. Where did they and many people like them go? Moreover, why do searches occur, no one is found, then years later, someone not even looking for the missing person finds him in that previous search area, like what happened with Noah Davis. Or with Bo Mann, seemingly his dead body in plain view lay in that courtyard for 18 months without anyone saying anything. And this is despite the tremendous work Bo's family and friends put into scouring the area for him. And how is it that Daniel Villarreal would just happen to find the most unused shed in Phoenix, Arizona, in which to hide, then die, to then be found by accident years later? The circumstances of all of these leave us speechless. Well, with Jamie Lee, we are once again challenged to figure out why a person wasn't found within a vast search area. What are the odds? And now a summary of the case. This disappearance is not on the Charlie Project due to it happening in Canada. Jamie Lee, to be honest, is probably one of the most on-the-straight and narrow people we have ever featured on Unfound. He enjoyed camping and sports. Interestingly, his two older brothers were fraternal, not identical twins. Jamie went to welding school and planned to make that a career. He had no friends who were trouble, no high-drama girlfriends, and Jamie's mother saw him every day because she would drive him to work even though he lived 4 blocks away. The only thing, although it was a big one, being a dark point in his life in 2011, was that Jamie's father was in bad health, but the very day Jamie went on the camping trip, Jamie found out that his father found a kidney donor. Appropriately and miraculously, Jamie's mother. How about that? So, on that day, September 3rd, 2011, in what was a last-minute decision, Jamie went with friends to Smoky Flats to camp for a few days. All of them had been there many times. That weekend, the area had hundreds of young people there. In the early morning of September 4th, after one too many drinks, Jamie decided he wanted to go home and got into a Jeep with the keys. To stop Jamie from drinking and driving, friends pulled him from the vehicle. In the process, Jamie hit his head on the driver's door steel frame. He let out a yelp but seemed okay. To cool off his anger, Jamie walked off into the darkness. He was never seen again. A large search effort over 30 days soon occurred, with people only finding Jamie's medical ID card and cigarettes that were his brand. A shoe print in a local quarry also caught everyone's attention. I'm sure, given the circumstances, the age, and the country, Jamie's disappearance will remind many of you of Madison Scott's, whose remains were found about 6 months ago in a place nowhere near where she was camping. Contemplate how this may affect your perception of Jamie's case as you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, was the shoe print in the quarry left by Jamie? Number 2, what do you make of strange happenings around Jamie's parents' house in the months and years after his disappearance? And number 3, are you inclined to believe a trucker's story even though this driver has never been identified? Jamie's family cannot help but believe that he lived for quite a while after the disappearance date and could be alive today. The guest for this episode is Jamie's mother, Julie DeWinter. Unfound news. I will be traveling to Colorado next Tuesday, December 12th. I will be there to work on an upcoming series concerning the murder of Janelle Matthews. I will then fly to Pittsburgh on the 14th, where I will be for a couple weeks. I will come back to Florida sometime between Christmas and New Year's. So what I'm saying is, at this point, I'm not sure what Unfound will be doing for an episode for December 15th. Next, if you haven't heard yet what happened less than 48 hours after the Pauline Diaz episode came out last Friday, please go to theunfoundpodcast.com to watch the video to see what someone did to a sign on Juanita's truck. Finally, I'm recommending 2 podcasts this Christmas season. First, the Consult podcast, which is doing a series on the disappearance of Jody Husentrut. And also Deep Dive, co-hosted by friend of Unfound, Jeff Wise. Jeff is going over step by step, very slowly, the disappearance of Flight 370. I may even be appearing on the podcast sometime in 2024. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Jamie Lee, Julie DeWinter. Julie, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you very much.
Coming to us from Canada, and the listeners know that we've covered actually quite a few disappearances in Canada. Of course, I'm an American. I live in Clearwater Beach, Florida. 95% of the disappearances that we featured on Unfound are from the United States. But we do get up to the Great White North once in a while, so I'm happy to be talking to you tonight on, what is it, the date? My father's birthday, December 1st, 2023. So, Julie, glad to have you on this episode. Let's just start as we usually do when we have mothers of missing people. Just talk in general about your family. Of course, Jamie is your son. Do you have any other kids? How would you describe, the overall DeWinter family?
Well, it's actually the Lee family. I'm the only DeWinter in the bunch.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
But,
Yeah, please.
I've got 3 sons. I have twin boys that are 34 years old. And Jamie was their baby brother. He was about 3 years younger. We were a really close family. When Jamie moved out of home, he moved 4 blocks away from us. So he still came home for supper just about every night. Until the last few weeks, I drove him to work every morning and I picked him up from work every day. And he spent just about every evening here. He'd come up for supper and watch TV and then go on down home to get ready for work for the next day. Weekends, not so much. He was a young man, but during the week, we saw him every night.
You had twins running your family or their father's family, or was that like a big surprise? What tell us a little bit more about that.
It was a surprise, all right.
Was it?
There is twins in our family, but it was explained to me with fraternal twins, it has more to do with your age than genetics. Okay. So the older you get, the more your body thinks, oh, we better get on this right now.
So they're fraternal twins. They're not identical twins. They're fraternal twins.
No, they're fraternal twins.
Fraternal twins. Interesting. Okay. And then you had Jamie a few years later. And so when you get pregnant with Jamie, were you once again thinking, am I going to have twins again? Did that go
Terrified.
through? Terrified.
terrified. We didn't tell anybody until we found out there was only one. Then we let everybody know that I was pregnant again.
Okay, very good. And how did Jamie get along with his two older brothers who were fraternal twins? Very close. Pretty
Very,
close.
very close.
Mhm.
With twins, they tend to, especially twin boys, they tend to fight and argue a lot. And
Oh,
Jamie was always the middleman. I
uh-huh.
think they knew that they could never hurt Jamie, so it was usually they fought between themselves, and it was always Jamie had to pick a side. But they were very protective of their younger brother.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Would you say that all three of them have similar personalities? Would you say Jamie's personality was different from theirs? Or what? All outgoing, all kind of introverted? What's the range?
All outgoing, great senses of humor.
Hmm.
Um, I'm very happy to say I raised three incredible young men. Um,
Yeah.
they knew their manners, they knew how to treat people. I
Hmm.
was very proud of my sons.
Excellent.
I
Very
guess I'm
good.
still very proud of my sons.
Okay. Yes. Of course. Okay. Very good. So three sons, two of them twins, fraternal twins. I think most people just think identical twins. Of course, fraternal twins means they're born at the same time, but they don't look like they look
One
like
is 6'5" and blonde, and one is 5'10" and dark.
And so genetics, it's just it's a big mystery. Okay, let's talk now about Jamie. Of course, this is the reason, unfortunately, that we're talking here tonight. Just talk about him as a kid. What was he into? Personality? Was he into sports or the outdoors or cars or interest, personality, wherever you want to go with that.
I'm very much an outdoorsy person. All three of my sons were in sports the
Hmm.
entire time they grew up. Um, it was my way of making sure they stayed out of trouble.
Yeah. Right.
Um, they loved camping, fishing, traveling. They were very much outdoorsy people. One of the twins was more the computer person, but for the most part, we spent their entire childhood out somewhere at a river, fishing and camping, and that's the way they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And actually,
So,
where Jamie went missing from, we had had him there since he was born, so he knew the area very well.
so this area that we're eventually going to talk about is very familiar to him.
Yes, very.
All right. And what town or city are we talking about in Canada where everybody lived and Jamie grew up? Where are we talking?
Grand Prairie, Alberta.
Grand
We
Prairie.
are in northern Alberta. We're the largest center in northern Alberta.
Okay. So for everybody else that's in relation to the United States, I guess maybe you're directly north of like Montana or Minnesota, like if you were to go directly south.
Probably closer to Montana,
Well,
straight north.
Montana. Okay, very good. All right, so he's into that. I have to ask, was he into ice hockey like every other boy in?
Not as much hockey,
Oh,
just because up here, hockey is a very expensive select group that actually get to do it.
okay.
But he loves skiing, snowboarding,
Mm,
skiing, anything that involved the outdoors.
right.
I don't know if I ever saw him on a horse, but other than that, he was on everything.
Okay. And we have to remember, actually, ice hockey is not the official sport of Canada. Lacrosse is the official sport of Canada. Oh, maybe Julie
Really?
didn't. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I
I
think
did
I
not
had
know
that as a
that.
trivia question once. Yes. Yeah. So
To tell
all the
you the
listeners.
truth, I've never seen lacrosse played here or heard of it played here, but everybody's hockey. Like the
Okay.
hockey
Of
is
course.
definitely the Canadian sport.
Right. Okay. Very good. What about, of course, his part personality, very outgoing. How about his education, going to school? What, did he have plans like what he was going to do once he got into his late teens, into his 20s? What about his education?
He got his grade 12, graduated. Then he ended up getting on at a company here as a welder. He loved welding.
That's
And he had
fantastic.
been with them about a year when he went missing. Just about exactly a year.
Huh.
But he just got a raise a week or so before that. Found out he had been accepted to the apprenticeship program. Found out he had enough hours to go to school right away. Had just gotten a vehicle from us. Things were going pretty good for him for the most part.
Yeah, welding.
Um,
Yeah, welding's a great career. You can make good money doing that.
he was
Always
good
going
at
to
it.
need welders. A lot of job security in welding for sure.
And it's something you're either good at or you're not. And
Mhm.
no, he loved doing it.
Mhm. I can remember doing welding in metal shop in like eighth grade, and I grew up to be a podcaster, so that shows you how good of a welder I was. All right, what about girlfriends? Any relationships? I don't think he was a father or anything, right? Uh,
No.
but did he have any girlfriends? What about relationships?
Mother didn't get to hear much about that.
Mm, okay.
Um, he did date several different girls, but it was usually most of his girls that he went out with were friends. But he did have some girlfriends. It's just that was something that he did not discuss with me.
That's kind of
Uh,
when my mother was alive. That's kind of, I mean, even today with my dad, it's the same thing. I don't talk about that much of my life ever with anyone.
they have to be pretty serious before they introduce mom, definitely.
Right, right, exactly right. Okay. So I'm just going to follow up now with some questions. Of course, they're on the outline. All the listeners of Unfound at this point know that when we do interviews, we follow outlines that have been approved by the guest just to make sure we iron out any mistakes. And some of these questions are specifically on there just to make sure the guests understand that they're going to be asked. Where was Jamie living at the time? I think maybe you said already that he lived maybe 4 blocks away from you. So was
Yeah.
he living by himself? Was it like an apartment? What was the situation?
He lived in a house with a bunch of boys that he had gone all through school with. He had known since he was a little kid.
Hmm.
There was, I think, six of them living in there in the house. It was one of the boys' house, and they had moved, so they were renting it to the boys. And that's who he went camping with as well.
Okay, and so they were like all like generally splitting the rent, I guess we might say, something like that.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It was all
And
of
how long he
them.
had been
The
doing
first,
that? Maybe say that again. How long had he been doing that?
he had lived with them about a year. As soon as he graduated, all the boys were excited about getting their first place, and they all moved out together. Um,
Hmm.
so he had probably moved in with them in July the year before. So just over a year.
Any concerns about him at the time of his disappearance? I realize maybe at the time, but now looking back now, were there anything that really popped up to you? Of course, we're getting into the circumstances, and I'm not sure if, I don't know, maybe
Well, I
this
think I should
disappearance necessarily
explain
was
the
predictable, but, anything you were like, I don't know if Jamie's making the right choice. Anything like that at all? Any concerns at all about Jamie?
no, but his father had been in and out of ICU in Edmonton 3 or 4 times that summer.
Oh,
He had a rare disease called Wegener's disease that had killed both his kidneys. So he was on dialysis. He was very ill. And I was trying at the time to get approved as a kidney donor for him.
mm-hmm.
And just before Jamie went missing, we were in Edmonton. I just got his dad out of ICU. And the day that he went camping, he had been working for the day.
Okay.
And when he got off, he phoned us because he was looking for a tent. And I gave him the good news that I'd been accepted as a kidney donor for his dad and that things were looking up.
Wow.
I do know that night that was one of the comments by them is he was very upset about his dad. He was
But it
really
was
worried
good,
about
but
him.
he was upset, but he had gotten good news earlier in the day.
But that's quite often the way it works when you're really, really worried about something and you finally get the good news. It's almost like a pressure relief valve in a way, I guess.
Uh,
Just that's when the emotions come out.
okay. All right.
And
So that
different
news,
kids out there that night said that yes, he was very upset about his dad.
okay. And I have to ask, did his dad pull through then? Did this,
Yes.
he
I gave
did.
him a kidney in 2013 and he's still with us now.
Wow. Oh, that's fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, yours kidney just happened. I know how rare that is, maybe of a non-related person for a kidney. That's really amazing.
Apparently, I'm a universal donor. I can donate to anyone.
Wow.
So, yeah, he got lucky.
Wow. Okay. Well, congratulations with that. Okay. Can you remember the last time? Maybe I should ask you this. You said that you would drive into work. Was there a reason that he didn't have a card? Did he not have money to get one? What was the situation there?
Um, well, he didn't end up getting his driver's license till fairly late, but it was more a financial thing.
Okay.
Um, just after he got his driver's license, we gave him one of our vehicles, which again, this was just before he went missing.
Hmm.
So he'd probably only had his driver's license a few weeks at most.
Okay. Before he went missing. Okay.
And I
And
think just
please.
to have mom pick him up every morning, drop him off every night.
Yeah, yeah, you get to see how he's doing, keep an eye on him, even though, he's not, he's an adult by that time, of course, but you're keeping an eye on him. You get to see, talk to him,
Well,
and
being mother, he always got a lunch
yes,
and stop by for supper on the way home. So
right,
yes, it worked out well.
right, okay. So you saw him, I guess, then the day that he went on this, being that you said he went to work, you did see him that day.
No, we had been
Oh,
in
because
Edmonton
you had been in
and
Edmonton.
we
All
were
right,
on our way home,
okay,
and the rest of the kids had gone out on Friday night to the campground. It was the September long weekend here.
okay,
And Jamie had to work Saturday, so he wasn't going to go. And I guess sometime during the day, he changed his mind and decided, no, he was going to go camping. So he phoned us. It must have been around 4 or 5 in the day. And we were on our way back from Edmonton, and which is 5 hours away.
okay,
And he phoned us to see if he could get a tent and said that he was going to go out camping. We knew the exact spot he was going to be at and who he was going to be with, and everything sounded great.
okay,
And then the next day, we went out for the day, and we got a call from my other son saying he just found out Jamie had gone missing.
okay. So that once again, you've already explained this is an area that he knew very, very well, and it also sounds to me like this trip was kind of a last minute thing. Maybe he'd gotten up that day, not sure if he was going to go. He knew about people
Yes.
that went, and then at some point during the day, it was like, you know what, I'm going to go hang out with these people up at this place that I know
Well, and
very
they could have even phoned him and said, hey, Jamie,
well.
you still got a couple days out here, might as well come out. And the spot that they camped at, um, the boys would go out and camp at that specific spot all the time. It was a place that him and his friends had camped at numerous times before,
Okay. And
both
these
with
people.
parents and by themselves.
So is this like real honest to goodness camping with like no electricity or anything, or is it like more this glamping or whatever they call it now? It was
Definitely
it
not glamping.
all right, so it was hardcore camping. If you wanted to eat, maybe you have like a charcoal and light the charcoal and cook things like
No,
that or what?
you go in the bush and you get wood and you bring it out and you light a fire and you cook your food. That's camping here.
Okay.
Where the campground was at is about you're in the States, so I'll say 30 miles out.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you. So about
and
what 40 is that 45 kilometers or
50
something like
50
50
kilometers. 50
kilometers. Okay,
kilometers.
right. Okay. So not
Here it is
close,
off.
not close.
For here, that's close.
That's close.
Um,
Okay.
Anywhere you go here, you're going to go a long ways to get there.
Okay.
Um, Here, that's reasonably close. It was on the campground is actually started up by one of the logging companies,
Hmm.
Canfor Logging. Um, and you go onto a logging road to get to it. It's about 10 miles off the main road. Having said that, there's 3 main oil fields, there's 2 logging companies. It is like a freeway out there. And we never even realized that until we started doing the search,
Yeah, you going up?
how busy it is.
How busy it
It's
is.
also a natural paradise. So you will see black bears and cinnamons, grizzlies. We saw
Wow.
wolves, we saw cougars. You name it, it's out there.
Okay.
But they're all so big and fat and healthy. They're not, they don't normally eat humans.
Okay. All right.
So
And we don't need to get into the names of these people, but just give the listeners and viewers an idea of who these people are. These are people that he had known for a long time. Were some of them his roommates? Just how big was the group? Just describe it.
there was, there was 6 males, and a couple of them had their girlfriends out there. And Jamie brought out a friend of his that was a girl that I didn't really know much at that time, but she wanted to go out, and Jamie, being Jamie, oh yeah, I'll give you a ride. Come with me. Um, the boys he'd known since kindergarten or grade 1. He'd gone to the same school with them, and all the parents knew each other. We've known each other, by that time we'd known each other at least 10 or 15 years.
Okay.
And quite often they went camping with some of the families out there. When he went camping, the place was plugged. They were actually camped right on a little island in the river that was so dry that they could drive to it. There was no water.
Wow.
But there was a stagette out there. There was all kinds of things happening.
Okay.
The last long weekend of the summer, we'd had a drought and it was hot. So everybody, there was over 100 people out there.
Wow.
But
in that little group that he knew, how many people would you say there were? Men and women together. 10?
We're a city, but we're a small town. So out of that 100, there probably was a few they didn't know.
Wow.
I mean, or maybe 90,000 people here.
Right.
So it's a boom town. It's an oil field town. But anybody that's lived here for any length of time, everyone knows everyone.
Okay.
So
but in his camping group though, of these, how big was his little
camping group? There was probably, I'm going to say, eight of them.
All right.
But people came out and visited them off and on during the night and left. And the campsite, everybody mingles with everybody. So they weren't just at their spot. They were all over the place that night.
Okay. And I'm going to take for granted, what kind of cell phone service do you get out there? None? Zero?
None.
Okay.
Which the RCMP even had boosters, and they couldn't get cell phone reception out there. You have to go about a mile up either side to the top of a hill, and even then it's patchy. Okay. It's a really bad dead zone as far as cell phones.
Okay. But he had been there before us, so Jamie would have known this.
Oh, yes. Everybody out there.
Everybody knows. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about the timeline of that day. You're in Edmonton. He's going to work. He says, well, I don't know if I'm going to go. Then he decides to go. He takes a friend of his. They go out there. And describe what, of course, you were not there, but what has been described to you on the circumstances of what happened that night to cause Jamie's disappearance? What did, and I should also ask probably, do the people there, are their stories consistent? So you just tell us what the story is, and then you can tell, does everybody's story match up?
That's a hard one. There was lots of drinking. And if you talk to the group of people he was with, their stories might vary just a little bit here and there, but was it at 5:10 or was it at 5:20 that he went missing? Not really major things.
Okay.
Of course, when it all happened, the first thing you do is you examine those people very carefully.
Right.
What is your story? Why were you different than the next person? But for the most part, the police did not involve us in the investigation. So we found out the boys had been polygraphed from their mothers. That's how we found out about it. The police never did tell us that.
We should go back to, please describe what they say happened that night. Maybe let's just go to that early morning. What did they say happened?
There was a lot of drinking. Jamie was not himself. He was acting strange. At one point, he got in his vehicle and he was leaving. He was coming home. And they said, no way. We are not letting you leave. One boy was sitting in the vehicle with him and one was standing outside of the vehicle, and they were trying to talk him into staying. And at that point, they said he was getting really upset about his father. And one of his friends decided to grab him out of the vehicle and take his keys away from him. Well, he opened the door, pulled Jamie out the door, and when he did, Jamie hit his head on the frame of the door. And it's a Jeep, so it's solid metal. There's no, I've hit my head on it before, getting in and out, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Yeah, hurts.
So when Jamie would get hurt, he would get mad, and he would say, leave me alone. And he'd walk it off, and come back. So when he got hurt, he blew up and told them all off, leave me alone, just let me walk it off. And it was still pitch black outside. And they said they could see him maybe 10 steps away from the fire, and that was it. And that was the last time they saw him.
And what direction did they say that he went? Did they describe? Of course, directions we're going to have to talk like east to west,
Well,
north to
they
south.
couldn't tell because as
Couldn't
soon as
tell.
he took 4 or 5 steps away from the fire, he disappeared.
Okay.
The next day when we had found out he was missing, we did find, the only thing we found of his was his first aid card and some cigarettes on the way out of the campground.
Okay. And we'll get to that. We'll get a little bit more.
It's about a mile into the camp.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll get into that in a moment. I want to go back to this though. So he leaves. So they think, he's just going to blow off some steam and he'll be back in 10 minutes or something. That's what they were thinking.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how long it took for them before they figured, you know what, he's not back, we should go look for him? And did they go look for him even though it was dark? Do you know?
Less than in an hour, it would have been daylight, or at least semi-light. We have a lot of daylight up here, even that time of year. So by 5:30 in the morning, it would have been light.
Okay.
As soon as it got light, they got on a quad and they went to look for him. They drove around the campground. They didn't find it. There was a bunch of them still sleeping, so they woke them all up. They started going around the entire campground, trying to find him. Then some of them came back to town because they thought, well, maybe he, managed to hitch a ride back to town. So they went to their house. He wasn't there. So then they phoned all of his friends in town. Did you see Jamie? Well, one of them got a hold of Jamie's brother, Aaron, right away and said, look, Jamie's gone missing. My son, Aaron, called the RCMP immediately. And by this time, it was around 12 o'clock. And we had been out for the day. We got a phone call from my son, Aaron, saying Jamie's gone missing. Where we were, we hit every back road doing relatively large speeds, and got there. When we got there, the RCMP had just arrived. And we found out that there was actually a search and rescue group that had been out there at 6 o'clock in the morning doing practice runs. So they were notified immediately. So by 7 o'clock in the morning, everybody in that campground knew he was missing.
And so those kids or the young people who were with them, they stuck around. He's missing. He doesn't come back. They go look for him. They stuck around. The police show up. So they're all there when the police show up so they can all be questioned.
Yes.
Okay. And were they still there when you got there?
They stayed out there for an extra 3 days.
Wow.
To search, and just in case he came back at night. And then most of them would work all day long and then come out to the site, to the mustard area, the search area, to search until dark.
So, regarding this, of course, it's dark. You've already explained that. Of course, these days people are used to, of course, to remember this disappearance wasn't yesterday, but still within the cell phone era. And we've had like flashlights on our phones that, that people can use, although they may not be as convenient as a real flashlight. But so they tried to go out and find them on their own, quads and everything. It's daylight. Were they able to determine how bad this hit to his head was? So once it became daylight, for example, when they looked at the Jeep, was there any blood on it? Was the hit to his head
No,
bad enough to cause any blood? Anything like that that they saw?
there was nothing, nothing that we could see.
Okay. All right. So then the searches start, and I know they were quite extensive. So you tell the listeners, I know that ATVs, helicopters, people, many people, you already had the search team that just happened to be out there. Explain what goes on. I don't know, for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, however long it went, what went on and how extensive was it?
It went on for 30 days. Because we are such a remote place, a lot of people took it very personally that Jamie went missing. They were very, very upset with the RCMP over how things went, which drew even more people there. And some days we would have up to 200 people searching. We had one person running the muster station who would train everybody on, you have to walk within a hand spread of each other every so many steps. You stop, you yell out all the way across the line to make sure everybody's there because you're in bush. They weren't only looking for Jamie, they were looking for anything. So a lot of old shoelaces and you name it got brought in just in case they were Jamie's. By the time we left, the place was flattened from everyone going through
the bushes and everything.
We had grid areas, so every time new searchers went out, they were assigned a new grid. We had Fish and Wildlife were helping search. Forestry was helping search. The oil field was helping search. The logging community was helping search. Where I worked at, one of my volunteers was an old trapper. And the trappers out there do not like people coming around their trap lines. So he went out and he talked to all of them. And, he was our liaison for that. We had a lot of people coming from Grand Cache, from the cooperatives there to help search. We had people up to 2 hours away coming. They'd work all day and come and help search for him. And there was nothing.
Yeah, and you did find a couple things we're gonna go back to. I know you've already mentioned them. We're gonna get to them specifically here in a bit. So from the spot, as best as you can tell, from the spot where they were camping, how far did you go in each direction? I guess maybe in kilometers. You can put it in kilometers. How far in any direction did the search go, would you say?
Complete, probably 10 miles in every direction.
10 miles, so a 10-mile radius, 20 miles diameter section. Wow.
Plus, it's a very large oil field. So normally all of the well site shacks are locked up. The oil field went around and opened up every single one of them and put food and water in them. Originally, we thought that he had wandered, he'd gone in the bush.
Yeah.
And it's black, it's thick.
Yeah.
Even if Jamie's used to it, it's black and thick out there. Then we started searching and realized, no, nobody could be lost out there. There's so much activity. If you stop for 2 seconds and listen, you can hear the closest compressor or the closest pump jack or the closest well site. You would walk towards that sound. It's a very strange place. You feel like you're alone, but there's a million people out there.
Okay.
So after a very short period of time, I knew he did not go in the bush. The river, people drown in every year in the spring. This was in the fall after a drought. The RCMP said if he'd gone in the river and fell, he'd got wet, but that was about it. He didn't drown.
Yeah, you said it was a dry season. It was a very dry season. It was very hot. You said that. So the river is kind of right there. Of course, I've already looked at the map of the general area, but and the river has a lot of water in the satellite photo I'm looking at. But at the time, it was you
No,
could walk and just barely get
it's still just as wide, but you could have walked across it and not even got your knees wet.
Okay.
And we had canoes, kayaks, jet boats, river boats, and they didn't just go down, they went up just in case he went the wrong direction when he walked away.
Sure.
They followed it all the way until it dumps into another very large river. That we had, there was helicopters, private ones, and oil field going over and usually doing 2-3 swipes a day. We had religious groups in helicopters. We had small planes, people that I'd gone to school with that had, in their business had these little planes. Well, they would fly them over 2-3 times a day. We had quads, Argos. We had horses.
Mhm.
I don't think there was a way of searching that we
And,
didn't do.
the one thing you haven't brought up, and the listeners know, I'm not a big believer in this, but I have to ask: what about dogs? Dogs go out there. Did they follow any scents in any particular direction? What can you say about that?
That's another story. Um,
Please tell us.
the RCMP, who had just got there when we arrived, took the dog out of their vehicle and said, "Oh, it's too busy." Put the dog back in the car and left. That's their search and rescue dog, by the way. So I'd say 2 weeks into it, we got someone that she does searches, and she works with a lot of the groups that do it for the RCMP. She came out and she was helping with the search, and her dog did, according to her, find Jamie's scent.
Okay.
And it scented Jamie outside of the campground, back on the road that he came in, across the river, up the other side, and then for some reason he went in a tree. And she said the scent was very strong at the tree, which meant he must have stayed there a little while. He then went down from that, and she said it looked like he went down a game trail and ended up in a gravel pit. Now,
How
you
far
could
away
say,
would this
well,
have been? Once again, in miles or kilometers, how far away
about
would this be?
3 miles, around 3 miles, which is not very far.
Okay.
Again, her dog was in training, but then 2 weeks later, just before the 30-day mark, we had to hire dogs and dog handlers to come in. They work for the RCMP, but since not requested by the RCMP, we had to pay for it ourselves. So again, our volunteers all pitched in, and the next day we had them on their way. And when they came, they were there for a very short period of time. And where they found the scent was across the river from where he had been camped at. And they said he seemed to have gone back out to the road and his scent disappeared. Now, it's a busy road, so that doesn't mean necessarily he went missing from that point. It just means they couldn't track him anymore because if they got back to the road.
Question for you. So you had one that went down, the dog went into this quarry, another dog ended up this road. Would you say that both of these animals acted in a consistent way, or did they go in opposite
Yes.
directions? Were they
And the
consistent?
handlers knew each other very well. After he went to this gravel pit, he went back out to the road. Apparently, there was people camped there. He walked out around where they were camped in the bush and back down the hill to the river where it all started at. So when the new dog handlers came, they started where the first one had left off. So where she quit tracking him, they started.
Okay.
So they didn't start at the beginning. They
see.
started at where she left off at.
Probably, I'm going to guess retrospect, hindsight 2020, it would have been nice if the dog just started at point A again to see if you get a consistent, because if you get two dogs 2 weeks apart going in the same direction,
Well,
there might be something to that.
the first time it was one dog. The second
Mhm.
time there was, I think, 4 dogs.
Mhm.
But they did pick up his scent in a couple of the places that the first dog had marked.
Okay.
So instead of redoing it, they went to where that dog left off at.
Okay.
The problem is this was 30 days afterwards.
Yeah. Right.
And when you're putting hundreds of people through the bush a day, what's left of it
Yes.
for them to even smell?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, it looked like a bomb went off out there
Yeah.
by the time we were done.
Right. Going
Because-
through, cutting down. I don't know I don't know what environmentally you're allowed to do, but trampling through the bushes. I don't know if you're allowed to cut anything down or anything, but certainly trampling through the bushes, pushing things out of the way, that kind of stuff.
Well, the last week that we did the search, we had enough.
Mhm.
And we use machetes, or usually one person would use a machete. It
Okay.
is really thick bush
Really
with
thick.
really thick undergrowth. It had been logged 50 or 60 years ago. So when you go in there, it's all deadfall and old stumps and undergrowth, and it's pitch black. So by the end of it, we had enough. We're not going back through here again. We're going to
Yeah.
make sure it's gone through. We're going to make sure we can see everything.
Okay.
And we searched for 30 days, and when the dog handlers came up with their report that they gave to the police, they said within a 95% certainty, I think it's 95, Jamie was not there dead or alive, and had not been for 24 hours after the disappearance, is what they came up with.
Okay.
At that point, the RCMP told us to shut the search down.
Okay. All right. Now, you did mention this quarry, so we're going to move on to this next. There was a footprint in this quarry. Is this the same quarry you're talking about where this dog ended up, or is it a different one?
Exactly the same one.
All right. Please tell the story then, please.
It was about a week into the search. We checked, there's gravel pits all around there. And we went into each and every one. The one we went into, you could tell someone had walked up on the pile and went around it till they got to the top. And then there was footprints at the top again. It's really hard to get a footprint from a running shoe, especially in gravel.
Mhm.
But the one at the top, it must have been wet because you could see somewhat of a tread.
Mhm.
We could not prove it was Jamie's footprint, but we figured it probably was.
Wow.
It was after that the dog handler came to us and told us that she had tracked him and he'd gone back through this gravel pit. So to me, that just kind of said, well, that was probably Jamie's print. And the
Mhm.
thing, we had over 200 and some psychics nonstop. It
Yeah,
was
we're not
horrible.
gonna talk about We don't
No,
talk
but,
about we're not gonna talk about psychics
no,
on here.
but I'm just, but dogs go by their nose.
Yeah, right.
And that's
Do.
what I'm trying to get at is psychics, there was a million of them out there. I don't trust
Right.
anybody,
Right.
But a dog, it has nothing to win or lose either way. It's not going to lie to you. It is depending solely on its nose. And since, to me, different clues did match up kind of with what the dogs came up with, I believe what the dogs came up with. More than anybody.
Okay.
You know, stories can change. Dog goes by his nose.
Did you tell me though that this tread was unique? There was something unique about
unique.
it. The shoe was unique. Was it a limited edition or something like that? It was more than just this tread kind of being in the gravel and you thinking there was something unique about it.
Yes. It was, Jamie had just bought his shoes the day before. So we went to the shoe store, found out what type it was. It was an Adidas shoe, but the track on the bottom is all these small squares with an X across them. That was the only shoe Adidas put out that had that tread. To our knowledge, there was no other shoes with that tread. When Jamie bought it, he bought a size 13. When we went back in to try and get shoes so we could look for tracks,
Yeah.
all they had left was 12s. And they said, well, that we only got a couple pair of 13s in. So they're all, Jamie bought one, somebody else bought the other. So all we have is a size 12. So we went in and they finally gave us a shoe, but it's not a deep tread. And it's a really unique, but it's not deep. So it's hard to get a footprint from it. We found lots of tracks, but there were so many people out there. How do you know who made the footprint?
Would you say that is I'm maybe guessing now you might be an expert in shoe prints and footprints, but maybe at the time you weren't. Would you say that the tread that was in this gravel pit, could it have been a size 13 or not?
Yes, because it was much bigger than a 13. When a footprint is made, whether it's in the snow or gravel or mud, the print is always much bigger than the actual shoe.
Okay. All right. So the print
to
could be the print that was in this gravel that was the impression was made certainly could have been a size 13.
Definitely.
Okay. Was this when
the
this
police
area
followed tracks before and turned out that they were my husband's, which were a size 7. So I explained it to them. Okay, you have great big huge boots on. Was it bigger than yours or smaller than yours? If it's not bigger than yours, then it can't be his.
Right.
And that's what I'd explained to all of the searchers. This kid had snowshoes for feet. So if you look at a small print, don't worry about examining it too much. It's definitely not his.
when you found this print with the dog, of course, ending up there, had other people already been there, or was this like the only print there? Did it look like, I guess what I'm saying is, when the print was found, it seemed like it was just one person walking alone and there were no other prints around? One person.
Not one person. And they didn't, whoever it was, didn't walk straight up the gravel pile. They walked around it to get it to the top. At an angle like you would on a car.
Yeah.
Again, something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would have walked straight up the pile.
Straight up.
But
okay.
I have no idea why.
Kind of did a circle around
Yeah.
it. Right?
Going up,
Okay.
No idea why.
Okay.
But
unfortunately, this footprint did not go in any. We think about footprints, we think of them going in a particular direction. This was not that. This was like the solitary footprint. You couldn't tell where this person went from there.
Yes, actually, you could.
You could.
When they got to the top of the pile, the prints that were at the top of the pile pointed directly back to the road, and they went down the hill towards the road, back out of the gravel pile.
Okay. All right, and that's where the prints ended, and that's where the scent ended. This is all happening in the same area.
Well, no, that's where we couldn't. Once they hit the gravel road, you can't see prints.
Yeah.
The dog actually scented him going out of the gravel pit, across the road where people were camped, which would be the side of, I guess, the east side. But it went around where the people were camped. Whoever that dog was scenting seemed to be avoiding people.
Right.
Then from there, it went back down to the river, and that's where she stopped tracking. And that's where the other dogs picked up.
And did you see any prints while this dog was going? Did you see any prints of this similar patterned shoe along that path?
Again, it would have been impossible. It really would have been. The loose gravel and hundreds of searchers. There was no way of really telling.
Okay. Let's move on to this. You've already mentioned these two items: a medical card and cigarettes. Where were they? How far away were they from the camping spot where he hit his head? And were they also in the general direction of where this gravel pit was? When were they found? Let's talk about that topic right now.
Okay. To do that, I have to describe the road going in. You turn off the main road, and the road into the campground is about a mile and a half long. But it goes in and makes a loop back towards the river. So where they were camped, if he bushwhacked it and went through the bush, it would have been about a quarter of a mile.
Okay.
If he went along the road, it would have taken him a mile and a half out. Where the card was found and the cigarettes, there was no trace that he was in the bush. The bush wasn't knocked down. There wasn't a path. There wasn't anything, which led us to assume then he walked the road out, which would have been a mile and a half.
Okay. And so how does this all correspond as best you can? You were there. I've not. Most of the listeners probably haven't been. How does this correspond with the dog sense, with this trip? Does it all seem to kind of go together or not?
From where the card was found was very close to where the road is.
Okay.
At the road, you are right at the bridge that crosses the river. It's a 1-lane bridge.
Okay.
So from where the card was found to where she started scenting him would be just the other side of the bridge. So less than an eighth of a mile away.
All right, so
Very
fairly
close.
consistent. So these things you're picking up, the dogs, this tread, these items, which are certainly being, this medical card had his name on it, right? So you know for
Yes.
sure that it's his. And were the cigarettes a brand that he smoked?
Yes.
All right, so let's just say
And
almost positively
the
those were his.
cigarettes they weren't in a pack and they seemed to be scattered around on the ground.
Okay.
And which might sound strange, except for in the vehicle, we found his cigarette lighter and other things. I can see him pulling a cigarette out to light it and finding out he didn't have a ladder or a lighter and getting mad and just tossing them.
And then in the process, his card falls out.
Yeah.
Did he not have a wallet for that card? Or, I know here in the United States, like, I know we have a different health system than Canada's, but I do have an insurance card that I have in my wallet. Is this not what he did?
Well, this isn't actually a healthcare card. It's called a first aid card, and it's industrial first aid training that he had to take for work.
Okay.
So it would be a card that really didn't mean that much.
Okay.
If it was his driver's license, it would have been in his wallet. Other stuff probably got stuck in his pockets.
Okay.
If you have to go out to a site, you have to pull out your tickets and show people. So quite often they're not in your wallet.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean that's what happened, but when I saw it, there was nothing disturbed. Didn't look like somebody had wiped out into the long grass or the bush or come through the bush. There was some footprints there, but again, no possible way of knowing if they were his footprints. But when it's cards there, you assume those were his footprints. But
And
again,
maybe I'll
it's
ask you
that
this:
rule.
when the regarding the card and these cigarettes, how soon were they found after he went missing? How long did it take to find them?
My other son, Aaron, actually found them when we were out there,
Huh.
and that would have been early afternoon.
Very quickly, really quickly. Okay.
That's
All right.
kind of the strange part about this. I mean, there was first aid, there was search and rescue on site by 7:00 and 6-7 in the morning to do training exercises.
Mhm.
They were notified immediately. So people were out looking for him probably within an hour to an hour and a half of him going missing.
Very quickly. Okay. All right, so those items are found. I'm guessing that the police collected those and they're still in the RCMP's possession all these years later, or
The card, yes.
the card is.
A
Okay.
lot of the things didn't get transferred over from search and rescue to the RCMP.
Right, we're going to talk about
Search and rescue are RCMP, but a lot of them are the ones that have been retired off the street or, things like that. And we found out 30 days afterwards they were to transfer the file to the RCMP to begin investigation. It never happened. So at that time, the RCMP had to go on radio, TV, and in the paper asking anybody who was out there to come forward.
All right, we're going to get further deep into that a little later. That's a preview for everybody. I now want to go to the truck driver story that you told me. This seems Wow, seems like a huge missed opportunity in all of this, and I'm still wondering why this person didn't alert everybody else. When did you first hear about this story? What is the story?
Um, I guess it was it was pretty close to the end of the search. When I returned to work, my coworker, when this all happened, my work shut down and everybody vacated and went out to search for my son.
Okay.
She had been out at the search off and on for a full 30 days. And when I got back to work, she said, well, whatever happened with the truck driver? And I said, what? Well, what truck driver? I have not heard of a truck driver. And she said, well, yes, that was about a week after Jamie went missing. We had a table set up at the turnoff to the campground so that people driving by, they could stop and question them to see if they saw Jamie. And a red logging truck, fully loaded, pulled up. The man inside was mid-30s, blonde hair about shoulder length, a little dirty looking, but if you're working all day, you probably are.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I picked a boy up about a week ago out here. Is that who you're looking for? And she said, yes. And he gave a description of Jamie, said that he had picked him up on the other side of the bridge, right where the trackers later said his scent disappeared,
Okay.
and that he had been bloodied, looked like he'd been in a fight. But he'd been in a fight. Said, can I get a ride out of here? And the truck driver told him, yes, but I'm headed to Grand Cache, and which is 2 hours the opposite direction of Grand Prairie. Jamie supposedly hopped in his truck, got a ride as far as the truck driver was going. He was going to the mill at Grand Cache, and he let Jamie off there, and that was the last he knew of anything. At that time, apparently, he gave his name and his phone number. Now, she passed all the information on to the woman who ran the muster site, who insists she doesn't know anything about it. Yeah. If I was to believe one of the two, it would definitely be the woman who took the tip to begin with. I've worked with her forever. One of the most honest people you'll ever meet. So I believe her that it did occur. Why the other one did nothing, and I can see why she would insist she'd never heard of it before if she didn't do anything about it.
Right.
So we contacted the RCMP. We told the RCMP. They said, well, there's not much we can do about it now. You don't have a name. You don't have a number, which is only partially true. He was hauling overburden out of the bush. Only one mill takes it. It's the Grand Cache mill. They only have one driver who does that run 5 days a week. It would have simply been a matter of getting a hold of the place and saying, did you have a driver? It did that. Was this his truck? Is this what he looked like? They didn't. I tried because of FOIP, which is the Freedom of Information Act in Canada.
Okay.
They can't release any information to me. None. So it went into the papers once. It was on his site quite a bit. Never heard anything. So then I got this brilliant idea. I started contacting every trucker site up here, every Facebook page, if there was the word trucker in it, I got a hold of them.
Yeah.
And they spread the word. And there's a couple of them that are actually do look for missing persons. And to begin with, I didn't hear anything. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, somebody came forward and said, hey, that sounds like a guy I work with. I live in Grand Cache. He had a red logging truck. Description kind of fits him.
Okay.
So I drove to Grand Cache, took pictures of the truck. He told me where it was parked at. And then tried to get a hold of the guy. Again, passed the information on to the RCMP. About a week or two later, my contact phoned me back and said, no, it turns out he didn't buy that truck till months after Jamie went missing. And that was
the end of
where
it.
it stopped. There's nowhere else I could go with it.
Wow. So he stops, says, yeah, I picked up a guy, this young kid, could be Jamie, tells somebody, the woman gets the information, pass it on to like up the chain of command, I guess. But then the person who is at the muster site, which the muster is where everybody would gather, would show up and they'd get instructions on what to do that day. This woman is saying, I don't know what she's talking about. I never got that.
I think she dropped the ball and afterwards realized what it meant. And that's why she insists she knows nothing about the tip. As far as the truck driver, I have talked to so many missing families and investigations. And sometimes people will say things like that to make themselves sound like a hero, even if they really never did anything.
My business,
but
I know.
The fact of where he picked him up really didn't mean anything until the dogs did their searching. And they said that he went into that side of the river to across from where he had been camped, came back out, and that's where it ended. They said he was not there, dead or alive, and hadn't been for at least 24 hours after he disappeared. So to me, just the dogs did kind of line up with some of the tips that we got.
Okay.
And let's face it, there's only two choices. He was either dead or he was alive.
That's a choice for all of us. So just to give everybody an idea then, being that once again, most people have not been there. He picked, if we're to believe this story, the truck driver picks Jamie up at a certain spot. How long would the ride have been from where he picked him up to where he dropped him off? How far?
2 hours. It would be 2 hours.
And unfortunately, this woman took this information. So we have no context of what they might have talked about for those 2 hours. This truck driver stopped, said, well, he looked like he went his fight. Well, did you ever ask him? Were you in a fight? Why are you out here by yourself? Why are you all blooded? Did you get in a fight with a bear? We don't have, this guy did not say anything like any of that. He just said, yeah, I picked up this guy and dropped him off.
And how much was actually said in the conversation, I really don't even know, because again, I wasn't there and I heard about it after.
Yeah.
So we had numerous leads like that over the years where by the time they're ever taken seriously or checked out, it's too late.
It's just, it's weird to me that, I'm just your average person. I'm driving along. Of course, I wouldn't pick up a hitchhiker anyway, but I certainly would not, I don't think, pick up a hitchhiker that looked like he or she had been in a fight. I might call 911, here in the United States or something. I don't know if I'm going to let somebody in my truck or my car. So,
here, yes, you would. For a number of reasons. One, coming from that campground, he probably had got in a fist fight, big deal. He needs a ride out. People don't hitchhike on the road as much as they used to, but this was right at a campground, right?
Yeah.
It didn't surprise me in the least. That happens here.
Okay.
You'll still see hitchhikers here.
Okay. All right. So we got this story. Guy picks him up, drops, and this area, this place where he dropped him off. Does this have any significance to Jamie? To anybody in your family? Does anybody lives there or what?
No, he would have dropped him off on the road where the turnoff went into the sawmill. Past there, there's what's called a cooperative. Some of the First Nations people up here used to live in our national park. When they formed our national park, they booted them out. They ended up in Grand Cache, and because that wasn't their ancestral lands, they never got treaty rights. So the government gave them these little pieces of land they call cooperatives.
Okay.
So we went to them. They don't like outsiders, and they really don't like most white people either. They were great people, absolutely phenomenal. But we went to the one closest to us, to where he would have been dropped off, and had a very strange experience, and they said he was not there. We pulled off the road, and before we could even get halfway down the driveway, they came flying out of their trailer over to our truck. And I asked if they had seen Jamie, and oh no, we heard about it. No. I said, yes, but did you see him? And she said, oh, we have dogs. We would have heard him. I said, you're not answering my question. I said, did you see my son? And she said, I already told you. My dogs would have heard him. My dogs didn't hear him.
Yeah, that's a non sequitur.
Yeah. Thing is they don't like outsiders, so they don't tend to want to tell you much anyway.
Right.
But the whole experience was very strange, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those people came and searched for him, so.
Okay. I want to ask you, going back to this whole, so the woman who took this information for the truck driver is a woman you know very, very well.
Very well.
Very
Yes.
reliable, just as reliable person you'd ever know. How did the person above her, this muster person, how did she get into that position? Where does she come from? Who is she? And maybe we need to know a little
This
bit
all
more about her.
evolved through my work. Where I worked in a museum, and when all of this happened, they locked up the doors and everybody came out to the search site to help search. One of the women out there had been at the museum only a few months, and our boss paid her to be out there for the first 2 weeks and run the muster spot. She did have previous search and rescue experience. She'd been in on searches before. Very nice person and half a wingnut.
Excuse me? Very nice person.
And half a wingnut.
Oh, half a wingnut. All right. All right. And
very
so what?
strange. And like I said, I would definitely believe the person who said they got the tip over the person who was at the muster spot.
All right.
She was not somebody we picked. My boss hired her from the staff.
All right, so let's maybe go this direction. After these searches were all done, unfortunately, and Jamie wasn't been found, and everybody kind of went back. Everybody else except you and your family, of course, went back to their normal lives. What went on with this particular muster woman after this? Did you ever talk to her again about this particular story?
Was fired.
She was fired.
So, yeah, didn't really have much to do with her after that. When I contacted her, it was actually through Facebook, and talked to her, and I said about the tip. I said, well, what happened with that tip? And she said, I've never heard of that before. I said, I don't believe you. I do believe what Rhonda said. Did you accidentally lose the number, or did something happen that you couldn't pass the tip on? And she just said, nope, never heard of it before. And
did she seem apologetic about it? I mean, she didn't admit to anything, but she said, I'm sorry, but I got to be honest, I don't know anything about that. Or was it a little bit more short and curt?
Well, she started with, I'm sorry, that never happened. That never occurred. Okay. And I said, well, no, I think it did. I just want to know why it didn't get passed on. I mean, things happen, but I got to know. And she said, no, she must be lying. I'm telling the truth. It never occurred. So there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's one way against the other. There's no proof, right? So you have to pick who you think probably was telling the truth.
Did this other woman who you trust so much, when she found out that this other woman saying never happened, did the two ever have words? Did she go confront her and say, I gave you that message?
The woman who took the tip was very, very upset about it.
Okay.
And to this day, Rhonda still helps out with anything to do with searches. Anytime I need any help at all in trying to help find Jamie, she's the first person there. When they first moved here, her daughter ended up at the same school as my son, Jamie, and was bullied. Jamie didn't like that and would walk her all the way to the museum every day to where her mom was. And she just hero worshipped him. She was very sweet on him.
Okay.
But I mean, they still help to this day, 12 years later.
Okay.
Anytime I need anything.
All right, so I think we've covered this truck story. I think we're going to come around
Yes,
with
I think
this.
so.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we go over and over and over this, because when you told me, obviously, when we first spoke, this seems something that's very significant, and I just want to make sure the listeners can judge for themselves, exactly what's going
Yes.
on here. Let's
Yes.
move on to this. Polygraphs were given to at least some of the people who were there that night. What were the results? And I guess, though, a couple people did not take them. What was the status of the lie detector test?
All of the boys that were with Jamie at the campsite, the camp together, they were all polygraphed. At the time, I did not know it had been done. It was the mothers who told me. So then I talked to the investigator, the RCMP investigator after that. And he said, yes, they had all been polygraphed. All of them were telling the truth. There was no doubt in their mind whatsoever that they passed the polygraph. They
Okay.
just did not know what happened. There was, I thought it was 2, but I think there was 3 girls out there.
Okay.
2 were with a couple of the boys. The one girl went out there with Jamie. They were friends, but she got a ride out there with them. I had assumed that they had questioned all the girls, but that is as far as it had gone. And a year or 2 later, I was talking to her and she said, no, they never questioned any of us girls. So I said, well, they need your statement about what happened. So she agreed. I phoned the RCMP here. They arranged for a police officer to go to her home in BC and take her full statement. The other 2 girls, nobody really knew them much, and they have long since gone. So I have no idea even where they are.
Wow.
They weren't exactly long-term serious relationships.
All right. Right. And once again, if we're to believe that he walked off and, and all these other things, the dogs and everything else, then, I don't know if we suspect any of these people at all, but I realized that I was going to ask this question about the polygraph. And I think it's most notable that it seems the guys who were trying to stop, most importantly, the guys who were trying to stop him from driving were questioned. They didn't try to avoid anything. They didn't try to get lawyers. They voluntarily gave these polygraphs and they passed.
Yes. And as a mother, of course, you look at each one of them.
Yeah.
You pick them apart.
Of course.
When someone goes missing, you never trust anybody again. So everything everybody says, you question, always. But, they've gone through hell. They've had 12 years of people accusing them of things.
Yep.
Of insisting, you must know, you must know. On his site, the comments are always, they better haul those boys' butts back in and question them again. And it has destroyed most of their lives. And I mean, completely destroyed their lives. And if I thought they knew anything, I'd be the first one to nail them to cross to find it out. But they were also very much like Jamie. They were all mama's boys, to put it mildly.
Okay.
And I don't think any of them could have kept a secret past 15 minutes, let alone 12 and a half years. I really, really think someone would have said something.
Okay.
I really don't think they know.
Okay. I'm inclined to agree with you. Now let's bring this disappearance closer to home, and in fact, onto your own property. You've had some stories. We'll start with the first story of a truck, and your truck, and it has something to do with the heater in the truck. When did this you start noticing this? What is this particular story?
Well, after Jamie went missing, when winter arrived, our heater wasn't very good in our truck. So what we did is we bought this little car warmer heater that you plug into your cigarette lighter, and it would keep it to a certain temperature at night. So that when I went and started it in the morning, it wouldn't take much to heat it up.
Hmm.
Um, you had to unplug it from the cigarette lighter every time you got out because it would continue running whether the key was in it or not.
That could be dangerous. Sure.
And we never locked our vehicles. They're old vehicles. It just I'd rather you got in it than you broke the window.
Mm.
But it happened on 5 or 6 occasions where we'd go out to the truck and the space heater would be plugged in. It would be warm in the truck and the battery would be dead.
Huh.
Now, if it was somebody stealing, there was stuff, there was change, there was money in the console, there was stuff all over in the vehicle that actually could have been stolen if someone was that desperate.
Even the heater
And
itself.
Nothing was ever touched. Yeah, here you're lucky if they don't walk away with half the vehicle. But no, nothing was. The only way we knew it is it would be plugged in, it would be warm, and my battery would be dead. There's a lot of strange things that have happened here. Not so much in the last few years, but especially the first year. On 3 different occasions, my son, her husband, woke up to hear somebody in our house by our back door. Again, we didn't lock our doors because we were thinking maybe Jamie would come home someday.
Yeah.
And the first time it happened, my son woke up and he thought it was his dad. His dad thought it was, oh, yeah, there's Aaron. He's going out again late at night. They both realized that, no, that's not the other person. And at that time, on the first one, Aaron got up and he went to the back door. And I have a chair there. And somebody had been sitting in the chair because it was wet in front of the chair. But there was no one there. So he went outside to look. It's dark enough that, no, he couldn't see anybody around. It happened twice more after that. So 3 times again, if someone comes in your house, they're usually not just coming in to warm up. If it's a stranger, they're coming in to burglarize or rip something off or steal something. Or it's a crack addict who's sitting there going, but just somebody coming and going like that is very unusual.
Did you not tell me though that regarding going back to the heater story that there were footprints around? If it's winter, I just take for granted that snow's going to be around
Not
there.
then. It actually happened at my work.
Oh, okay.
Again, I work at a museum. I design exhibits and look after collections. And every year in December, we shut everything down to rip apart our exhibits and rebuild our new exhibits for the year. And we are in a park in a ravine. There is no direct road there except for the staff entrance that comes down a hill. And I went to go out to my vehicle at the end of the day, and there's footprints around my vehicle that were the identical tread of Jamie's. These ones, the tread was good. It was wet, sticky snow, and it was a good tread. It looked like they walked down the hill, walked around my vehicle, walked to the door, tried the door, and then left. So I called the police right away. They came and they photographed the footprints, measured them, and sent it all to Adidas. Adidas came back with it. Yes, that was that exact type of shoe, and it was a size 13.
Huh. Wow.
Now we know from when we got his shoe that there was only 2 13s sold in Grand Prairie, and one of them was to Jamie.
Yeah.
So not proof it was him, but in my mind, I knew it was.
Have any break-in problems at this museum? Anybody ever try to break in, anything like that? Sounds like this was what this person was trying to do. Maybe it might have been Jamie.
No, it had been broken numerous times, but usually we had a village. So they usually would try and get through the fence to get into the village to break into an old building, sleep in, whatever. If they were trying to get in the building, they would go to the front of the building where there was glass and they'd break the glass. Where the door is for the staff entrance is solid wall. There's not a window for 40 feet because museum collections cannot handle sunlight.
Right.
So there's no way that you would get in that door. That's why they always break the glass on the front to get in, because you can't get in these doors. They're steel and they have, a few locks on them. You're not going to break into them.
And once again, how long was this after Jamie went missing that you noticed about your car and these footprints around your car?
It was on December 29th.
So about 3 months later.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So
what about going back to your own vehicle that was parked outside with the heater and everything? Snow on the ground. Did you see any footprints for that? It seemed to me it's Canada. Footprints, snow on the ground, anything like that could help you out.
No, because where we park, everybody gets in and out of the vehicle at that point. It would be packed down, and there'd be so many footprints that there's no way that you would have enough soft snow to impress a print in.
Okay. And did you ever talk to your neighbors about this? Did they ever have any kind of the same thing? Maybe somebody trying to break into the house, somebody going into their cars at night, anything like that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Wow.
Nothing at all.
Okay. You also had this story about these, are they called I have it in the outline, alpine flowers. Somebody was leaving you flowers somewhere at your house, and you thought this was, of course, noteworthy because of somebody had to know that you were really into these, to give
Not
you.
only that, just the pure strangeness of it. The flowers, they look like a daisy, a yellow daisy, and the middle is yellow. They only grow in the alpine around here, so Grand Cache area is one of the places they grow. We're really not far from the mountains here. If you drive south of here an hour, you're in the mountains. So they didn't come from Grand Prairie. They're not sold in a greenhouse. They are wildflowers. Where they grow is in the alpine. I came home and I went to go in my back door, and I went to open the screen door, and here somebody has picked flowers, plant, roots, dirt and all, and stuffed them between my screen window and the screen on my screen door. And like I said, I could see a flower, but the flower, the plant, roots of dirt and all were stuck in there. And I thought, okay, that could just be somebody that's, been involved in the search, that we've met a few of them that weren't quite right. So, once happening, you think, well, maybe it could be somebody else. But I was known as the flower lady when my kids were little. I've got a degree in horticulture. I loved plants. I was called the flower lady. But the next year, just about to the day, or very close to the day, I came home, and on my front part, I've got a small cast iron table and chairs. And on it was a yellow alpine daisy with the plant, the roots, the dirt, everything laying on my table. Over the years, there's been a number of things show up, and always right around the same time. The last one has been a few years ago now, but it was a medallion that was made of jade that had been hand carved and not very well. And again, it was sitting there. There's jade found at Grand Cache. So if it was just somebody picked some up, it'd be pretty rare to find jade around here. Did they buy it from a craft store or get it from somewhere like that? That would definitely be possible. But whoever carved it, it was not somebody, it was not bought, and nobody would have.
It's not professionally done.
No.
What about these flowers? You once again, given that you live there, we don't. How far would you have to go from your house to find those flowers? How far?
The very closest would maybe be an hour in the bush.
Wow.
Yeah. We're not very far from the mountains,
Hmm.
but to get to them, you either go to Grand Cache, which is 2 hours, or you have a big four-wheel drive and you just go straight into the bush, and it's much closer, but it would still take you 2 hours to get in and out.
So what you're saying is whether it was Jamie or somebody else, these flowers came from at least an hour away. You
Yes.
couldn't just go right like to the nearest woods or forest near where you live and find them.
No, you couldn't.
Wow. And what kind? They're called alpine flowers. Is that what they're called?
It's a type of daisy that grows in the mountains. So they call them an alpine flower.
Okay.
Grand Cache has millions of wildflowers. It's absolutely beautiful in the summertime.
Mhm.
It's just fields and mountains of wildflowers. But that would be the closest place that you could find that one.
Okay. Interesting. But you say this hasn't. What when you say it was usually happening around a certain time of year? What time of year was this? That this was occurring over and over.
End of September,
End of
near
September.
the end of September. When the first ones arrived was within the last, I think the search ended a few days after that. So it was the end of September. And after that, it's always been right around that same period of time.
Okay.
Now, according to my family, it's just a kook that, which you never know. But
That's a pretty consistent
you
kook.
cannot say everything is a coincidence.
That's a pretty consistent kook to be doing it just one time a year consistently, year after year after year. That's a pretty consistent.
And it hasn't happened for the last couple of years.
Okay.
It did go on for about 10 years.
Wow.
And
Okay.
strange things, like it was never anything that was bought or purchased, or it was always strange things like the flowers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's move on to this, and you've already mentioned it. We're going to go over it again. You talked about this paperwork that I just have it as lost in the outline, but why don't we go through this again? So all this work was done for these searches, and then somehow it didn't get passed along to the actual RCMP from one division to another. Please explain that.
For the first 30 days, it was the RCMP, that they were considered the search division of the RCMP, search and rescue. At the end of their search and rescue, which was the 30 days, the file is then handed over to the investigative arm of the RCMP, which never occurred. We found that out because they had to go into the paper and the TV and radio and ask anyone that was out there to please come and re-give their statements. Now, a few years after that, they did it's called a Crime Stoppers video. They take actors out and kind of walk through what happened.
Yeah.
My investigator, or Jamie's investigator at the time, was on holidays. And a couple days before it, he phoned me up and he said, they're going to try and cancel it on you. He said, they're using an excuse, they've got nobody to drive them around. He said, I'm giving you a heads up so you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I said, like hell, they're canceling that. Huh. So I went, and this is happening. I will drive you all around. I've got a car with great big huge gangster trunk in it. I can stick you all in there if I have to. I don't care. We're doing this. And they actually did 2 Crime Stopper videos. Another one was of a girl that I don't really know much about the other one. But at that time, the head of the cold case investigation unit was down for the Crime Stoppers video. Mm-hmm. And he talked to me a bit and he said, well, I was going to read the file, but it's not all there. I said, I know. First month's missing, right? And he said, yes. He said, that seems strange. I said, well, I want his case out of here. I want it with the cold case. I do not want it left here. He said, well, let me see what I can do. The next day, they were getting ready to fly out. I drove them to the airport, or was going to. I went there and they said, well, one of the police cars was taking them. And I said, so what about Jamie's case? And he said, oh, no, it's all good. It all looks fine. And that was it. Jamie's case is still here. And it's going to get even worse because the city has now decided to go with city police rather than RCMP. City police and RCMP will not share investigations. So they'll get Jamie's missing person case handed to them with no information.
Happens in the United States too. A lot of egos out there.
And the thing is, they still won't transfer him to the cold case, even though it's been 12 and a half years.
And what's their explanation for that?
It's not a cold case.
Then what is it?
That's what I said. I said, when's the last time anybody looked through his file from beginning to end? Well, that's never occurred. We don't have time to look through that kind of stuff. I said, then as far as I'm concerned, you're not investigating it. If you're not investigating it, it's a cold case. And they said, no, a cold case is when there's no longer tips. Because since we still get tips off and on, it's not a cold case. Therefore, it cannot be transferred.
So are they saying that they're still receiving tips on Jamie's disappearance? Are they saying that they're still receiving tips on Jamie's disappearance to this day? Is that what they're saying?
I get a couple tips. I get a couple tips, usually 2 or 3 tips every year. I do. Most of them they are not Jamie, but you have to check out every tip. And I have always phoned the RCMP and notified them every time we get a tip. I can't expect them to work with me if I don't work with them.
Yeah.
And I give them the benefit of the doubt. I tell them what's going on. You check into it because I'm going to. So you can check it yourself or you can let me do it. I don't care, but they're used to me by now.
It's a weird definition of a cold case. It's not a cold case because we keep getting tips. Well, but it doesn't sound to me like the tips are going anywhere. And so are you saying that, you're going to put it into the cold case bureau or whatever, but then you get, some psychic who, says a tip and it doesn't go anywhere. Oh, we got to keep, it's not going into the cold case just because, somebody who, in my opinion, would not have a lot of credibility says, oh, this happened. It seems like a weird way to define that.
But put it this way, the last tip that I got came through to me and it was a link to a child pornography site of someone who thought while investigating something that they saw Jamie on it. Well, for one thing, that was 12 years ago. He's not 19 anymore. He's not 16.
Right.
But I've checked out every tip there ever is, and you don't know how god awful that was. I sat there and I looked through the whole thing. It was horrific. Yeah. And those are the things as a parent you have to deal with with a missing child. You have to check out every tip, no matter how gruesome, how gross, or how disgusting. Because if you don't, that could be the one tip that you missed. I've been down to homeless encampments in the middle of the night because I got a tip. I've been in I've gone to bikers clubhouses, walked on in and sat my ass down. Mm-hmm. I'm here. I want answers. What do you know? Do you not know? I've been very pushy about trying to find out what happened to my son, and no one is going to scare me away from doing that ever.
We should be clear. So he would be 31 now. 31 yes. If 31. So he was 19 when he went missing. So he's 31 now. And yes, he of course would look a lot different than he would at 19.
He would be a young man.
Yep.
He had baby face. So when his 19 28-year-old picture, he looked like your typical 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he
31,
looks very young for his age, for sure.
you look much different.
Right, right. And that's a mistake a lot of people make. They see a missing person's picture and they say, "Well, I think I saw that picture." Yeah, but this person went missing 20 years ago. Surely that person does not look like that now.
And
So
we've had tips where someone's absolutely positive they have seen Jamie, they've told us where he is, and that we're mistaken on our posters because he's only 5'8", not 6'1". And he was 6'1"
yeah,
at 18. His brothers grew 3 inches after they turned 18. So I doubt he's even still just 6'1" if he's around. But at least they're looking.
yeah.
They're keeping their eyes out, which is a good thing. And as painful as it is, I cannot not check out a tip,
Right.
no matter how horrific. Because then I would second guess myself. Could it have been? I feel much better when I do, and I'm horrified and I feel sick to my stomach. At least I know it wasn't him and he wasn't in it.
Yeah. You've already kind of described what you've been doing over the last 12 years, going to these different places, taking maybe what we might call some risks, going into shady environments, going up to strangers. Um,
But usually as soon as you say you're the mother of a missing boy and you're
yeah,
not stopping till you find him, all of a sudden they're totally different people.
yeah,
Because a lot of them know someone that's gone missing, or they heard of Jamie, or usually people that when you first walked in might seem a little violent, all of a sudden sympathize with you.
mhm.
They can see the pain you're in and that you are a mother. And as a mother, this is what you do. And as soon as that happens, they're usually really great people.
Maybe, of course, you're doing the interview tonight, once again on December 1st of 2023. Can you explain maybe what your other two sons have been through and your husband has been through regarding all of this over the past 12 years, the emotional toll that this has taken on them as well? Can you speak for them?
Um, Everybody, my sons, they have gone on with life. I don't think a minute ever goes by they don't think of their brother,
Hmm.
happy times or sad. Um, my husband and I, it's more you're left in limbo. Um, when one of Jamie's friends get married, I feel like screaming, "No, no, no! Just wait, just wait. He's going to be back. He's going to
Yeah.
be back. Don't move on with your life. Don't get
Yeah.
married. Don't
Yeah.
have kids. Don't do anything normal. We're waiting for Jamie, okay?"
Yes.
And the daytimes, you learn to move on with life and, go to work and get your groceries. It's the night times you can't control.
Mhm.
And I know I can speak for my husband and myself. In 12 and a half years, there has not been one night that it's not nightmares all night long. And I don't mean in horrible things happening. It's you're fighting to get Jamie back and you're fighting to, it's the way you're feeling away during the day. But at night you can't control that. And Jamie's so much a part of our very fiber and our very life that, for an example, when I was coming to do this interview, I ended up sick to my stomach. My blood pressure went through the roof. I was having a panic attack. And that happens every time.
Mhm.
It's because it's so much in you and so much a part of you that it's indescribable. There's no word in the English language for the grief of having a missing person, let alone a missing child. There is no word to sum up the emotion.
Yeah, you've expressed what a lot of other guests have expressed, especially mothers of missing adult children. The whole point about, the world going on, the world keeps spinning. You know,
and
all
your
the,
heart
it's been
stopped
12
beating.
years. All Jamie's friends aren't 19-year-old, they're all in their early 30s. They're getting married, they're having kids, they have careers, or changing careers, or moving places and things. And like you said, you just want to kind of,
I
wait
can't.
just a minute. Jamie's going to be here. Don't change your life. He's going to be here. It's common. Yeah.
My mother passed away 5 years ago, and um, somebody said something that actually made me laugh when she passed away. My mother had to know everything all of the time. She was the most know-it-all person. She was a teacher. She had to know everything. And of course, she always told you that she knew, right? So when mom passed away, somebody said, she did it again. She'll be the first person that really finds out what happened to Jamie. She's done it again.
Yeah.
And it put a smile on my face thinking that if he passed on, my mother was there.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own idea what happened.
Yep.
Um,
I can see why.
but in my heart, um, I think Jamie's still with us. I don't know what happened. I
Okay.
don't know why. Maybe it's just because I'm his mother. I know a girl that went missing a few months before Jamie, Madison Scott.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
Sadly, they just found some of her remains.
Yeah.
And until that point, her mother was still convinced she was alive. So I think, as realistically, it's probably because I'm his mother that I cannot think other than that. How do you search for somebody you think is dead?
Yeah. And I have to admit, you bringing up Madison Scott, that when my assistant Emily, who first spoke to you, reached out to you, and she told me that you two had talked, and she gave me like the paragraphs, her general rundown of Jamie's disappearance. I actually thought of Madison Scott's disappearance because, once again, going missing, it's Canada, going missing out in what we would call the middle of nowhere of Canada, and friends being around, and friends don't seem to know what happened. And what I think is interesting about this, of course, her remains, like you said, are just discovered maybe within the past 6 months in a place that I don't think anybody could have predicted. I think that if people thought she did, it was a really surprise.
They got a tip.
Yeah, they got a
That's how
tip after all these years.
I've talked to them off and on. Families of missing people tend to bond together. Not
Yep,
to
I
begin
know.
with, you don't want to ever think that your child's going to be missing that long. But you do, because you have something in common. The I don't know, and the only thing you have in life is hope. And when they found Madison's remains, I cried because I thought, now your hope's gone. You got to know. You have to know what happened. It doesn't mean it's easy to know what happened.
Julie, do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that set up for Jamie's disappearance? If so, why don't you give it out to the listeners and viewers right now?
There is actually 3, because 3 different volunteers started them up.
Okay.
So if they type in missing person, Jamie Lee, all 3 of them actually come up.
Wow.
So you can take your pick.
All right. All right. Well, that's great. A lot of disappearances are lucky to have one. You have 3. So that's pretty impressive. These are all people. Are these run by people who you know that you
One
trust?
was one of the girls that was out there, started one. One was a mother of one of the boys that was out there, started one.
Okay.
And another one was just one of the searchers who was very computer savvy, decided to start one up. And sadly, now they've all moved on with their lives, and I now have 3 of them.
You manage all 3 of them yourself.
Oh, I try, but hackers are usually, every time anybody posts on any of the 3 sites, they get hacked within 24 hours. So not too many people post on them very often.
All right.
Sad, but it's the way life is.
Okay.
Especially when your name is Jamie Lee, because Jamie Lee Curtis is the most hacked site in probably North America.
Yeah, she's very
got a
well
missing.
known.
Well, and she's got a missing persons thing that she does. She helps look for missing people. So usually 3-4 times a week, we get requests for membership from Jamie Lee Curtis, who's on 120 sites and has been on Facebook 3 days. So yeah, block, delete.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But that's what happens when your son's name is the same as somebody famous
Yeah.
who has been very badly hacked over the years.
Right. Didn't even think of that. Julie, any final words before we complete this interview?
All I ask is people to keep their ears open, their eyes, and their heart. There has to be answers out there somewhere. 12.5 years is a long time to go with no answers. And someone out there knows. So if somebody has mentioned something to you that seems a little strange, or if you see something, put a tip in. If you're wrong, it's not a big deal, but you could be right. And we've had tips that are turned in 3 weeks ago. We saw him. Well, 3 weeks ago doesn't do you any. Don't question yourself. Don't hesitate. If it's not him, it's not him. But use your gut response and contact someone.
Let me ask you one more question, just so everybody's absolutely clear where this happened. We know where he grew up and everything, but what is this name of this camping area? What is this area called in Alberta where they were camping and he went missing?
It's called by 2 names. The original name is Smoky Flats, and on some maps, it calls it McLeod Flats. We don't know why, but there's a discrepancy in the name. To the locals, it's Smoky Flats. And I think on the map that you probably looked at, it's probably called the Smoky Flats Recreation Area.
Yep, I saw that. And the name of the river that goes through there, what is the name of the river?
The Smoky River.
The Smoky River. Okay,
it's one of our very large, it's a fairly large river up there.
Okay.
All of our rivers run north. So the further north you go, the bigger the rivers get.
Okay. Julie, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for being understanding and patient. It's a hard thing, but it's probably not easier on your end either. So I thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you and take care. God bless.
You too.
And that was my December 1st, 2023 interview with Julie DeWinter, mother of Jamie Lee. I thank her for joining me and all of you on both audio and video for this episode. I also need to thank my assistant Emily for arranging my introduction to Julie. I've made a video to show all of you the area where Jamie disappeared. You can find my analysis on Unfound's YouTube channel. So, where to go with this summation? I'm going to go in an unlikely direction. Percentages. And yes, I'm actually going to do some math for all of you. I hope you'll understand it. I actually got the idea from a Federal Express CEO or someone else in that company from years and years ago. It went something like this. Even if FedEx gets the delivery of packages correct 99% of the time, that 1% of lost packages is still a huge number. And in fact, for any of the shipping companies, post office included, if their delivery success rates are even 99.9%, that is still many, many letters and boxes and gifts and all sorts of items that don't get delivered. 0.1% would still be a huge failure rate. This is how we must think about search areas. For example, let's say a group wants to search 4 miles in any direction from a disappearance spot. So 4 miles would be the radius. To find the total area to be searched, that would be about 50 square miles. That's 4 times 4 times pi, which is 3.14. So 4 times 4 times 3.14 is roughly 50 square miles. 50 square miles, to think of it another way, that would be a square with sides just over 7 miles long. So 50 square miles is 151,782,400 square yards. That's 27,600 American football fields, not counting the end zones. That square area is just a wee bit smaller than Staten Island, where New York City is. So to say it again, 50 square miles is about 27,600 football fields. Now, going back to our FedEx quote, if searchers miss just 1% of the search area, in which they're going out to 4 miles in every direction, that would be like not searching 275 football fields. For a human body that is on average only about 2 square yards in size. So to once again do the math for all of you, and I understand some of these numbers are huge, the human body in this example is only 1/75 millionth of the size of the entire search area. And if that missing person's body is in that 1% that is missed, the remains would only be 1/750,000th of the size of the missed search area. And this doesn't count for decomposition and animals taking bones away, etc. If you're wondering, even if I were to say the searchers covered all but 0.5% or even 0.1%, the area not searched would still be huge. 1%, 0.5%, 0.1%. None of them sound very large until they are. Of course, the big problem, having brought up Madison Scott and her discovery near the beginning of this episode, searchers in this hypothetical scenario could be looking for someone who is actually nowhere near that search area. So I ask all of you concerning Jamie Lee, what are the odds? If you'd like to hear and read more of my commentary on searches and more of my analysis into the disappearance of Jamie Lee, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Sign up to partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.